Well, for the only time in this election, American voters got a chance to hear the vice presidential nominees debate head-to-head on a number of topics and find out what vision they have for the future of this country. The coronavirus pandemic, of course, was the first issue up for discussion. Viewers didn't only hear about it, the seriousness of the virus was front and center as the Commission on Presidential Debates stepped up safety protocols with plexiglass barriers on stage. Vice President Pence and Democratic nominee Senator Kamala Harris also went back and forth on climate change, the Supreme Court, healthcare, and police reform. So, to help us break down the key moments and policy debates last night, let us bring in Leslie Sanchez and Lynda Tran. Leslie is a Republican strategist, Lynda is a Democratic strategist, and they are both CBS News political contributors, and we are so happy to have them. So we're going to start with COVID, just like they did in the debate. Let's just play a little portion of how both of the candidates address the issue of the pandemic and how the administration has dealt with it so far.
The president said it was a hoax. They minimized the seriousness of it. The president said, you're on one side of his ledger if you wear a mask, you're on the other side of his ledger if you don't. And in spite of all of that, today they still don't have a plan. They still don't have a plan. Well, Joe Biden does. And our plan is about what we need to do around a national strategy for contact tracing, for testing, for administration of the vaccine, and making sure that it will be free for all.
But I want the American people to know that from the very first day, President Donald Trump has put the health of America first. The reality is, when you look at the Biden plan, it reads an awful lot like what President Trump and I and our task force have been doing every step of the way. I mean, quite frankly, when I look at their plan that talks about advancing testing, creating new PPE, developing a vaccine, it looks a little bit like plagiarism, which is something Joe Biden knows a little bit about.
All right, so, the numbers here are tragic. The U.S. leads the world in reported positive cases and deaths, and we're seeing a recent uptick in cases in several states. So, Leslie, I want to ask you, you heard the vice president's response there. He kind of tried to twist it into kind of a little bit of a zinger on Biden and plagiarism, but he talked an awful lot about Biden's plan. Do you think that the vice president did enough to convince the American people that his administration deserves another term in order to tackle this pandemic?
It really matters, Anne-Marie, where the bar is set, right? The vice president did what he had to do in delivering a cogent, a clear response about what the administration had been doing and what they were doing moving forward. And a lot of that focus was on the vaccine, kind of moving the economy forward, tied together with the vaccine. That's the message that he had to deliver. Kind of the retorts back and forth and the zingers back and forth. That's kind of good debate style. But did he deliver what he had to? He actually did. The people who were skeptical and disliked the administration were never going to be convinced one way or the other. For people that wanted to see a stark contrast from the presidential debate, that the administration has their sensibilities and has a plan moving forward, it eased that. Will it convince them? It's too early to tell, but it eased that anxiety, and he did what he had to do.
Lynda, I was struck by, as the vice president responded to that question, the fact that we were watching a debate play out for the first time in American history with two candidates behind plexiglass because of the fact that the president of the United States inner circle and many members of his administration, from senior military officials to, his personal sort of body man, have been infected with COVID-19 or are quarantining. And, if you wanted a more stark reminder of where and how this administration had responded to this threat, it was sort of right there on your TV screens. The other question, of course, is sort of the fallout from COVID-19, and that has to do with the economy. We just learned this morning that 800,000 unemployment benefit claims were made last week. The vice president claimed that Biden's team wants to raise taxes. He actually took a comment that she made about repealing the Trump administration tax cuts to turning it into an attack that the vice president wants to raise taxes. So what is the Biden-Harris economic plan should they win this election?
Well, I should let the campaign speak for itself in terms of what their plan is, but clearly part of economic relief and recovery is going to have to start with getting the coronavirus pandemic under control, and I think that's the case that Senator Harris made quite strongly last night. You were talking a little bit earlier about Vice President Pence wanting to look forward and project what could happen in the future. The problem is we've now seen 4 years of the Trump-Pence administration mishandling some of the most important moments in American history, not the least of which is the pandemic. The Biden-Harris team has certainly laid out a number of different ideas as part of their platform in terms of building green jobs of the future, investing in addressing climate change, and investing in innovation and research. You actually heard Senator Harris talk about that last night. But first and foremost, the job of the next American president is going to be getting this pandemic under control so that Americans can get back to work, so that we can go about our lives and rebuild the economy the way that it ought to be.
So listen, also related to the coronavirus pandemic is healthcare in general, access to it. Senator Harris attacked Vice President Pence on the Trump administration's support of a lawsuit at the Supreme Court questioning the constitutionality of the Affordable Care Act. Leslie, I want to ask you, we're in the middle of this pandemic, and repeatedly the president has been asked about what his administration's health plan is. And I'm wondering if you think that Mike Pence could have done a better job explaining, without the Affordable Care Act, well, what's the alternative? It's been 4 years and we still don't actually know what plan the Trump administration would put in place after they get rid of the Affordable Care Act.
Right. It's actually, Anne-Marie, that's the greatest point. It was a missed opportunity in that sense. You have to roll this back to the original debate of the Affordable Care Act, where Republicans were contrasting their vision of what it would be. It would not include raising premiums. They all agreed on pre-existing conditions, Republicans and Democrats. So I think that's a false argument when they bring that up. You're going to lose, these pre-existing conditions. That was never really part of the debate. The debate was about the rising cost of premiums, prescription drugs, could you keep your own doctor? And many people, especially Republicans, feel the Democrats failed on that. That's why you heard a lot in 2016 about repeal and replace. What were the alternatives to find better solutions to make it more economical for families? That was the missed point there. There are many solutions, and kind of easing people's concerns that they would be losing their health care or access at a very critical time. That's where I think in many cases Republicans fall behind in contrasting that and really presenting what the alternative is. And that's what this election is about, is the alternatives.
Let's talk about climate change, folks. Fracking was brought up a number of times by both candidates. Let's play a little bit of what they said.
They want to abolish fossil fuels and ban fracking, which would cost hundreds of thousands of American jobs all across the heartland.
First of all, I will repeat, and the American people know, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact.
A CBS News fact check determined that Vice President Biden's record on fracking is inconclusive, as he changes his answer on keeping or banning it a number of times. We also know that when she was running for president, Senator Harris, in response to a question from a voter, said that she would, if elected, end fracking. Lynda, why has the Biden camp been unable to sort of provide a solid answer to this? And why is this issue so significant that it gets raised at not just the vice presidential debate, but whenever there are questions directed at the president?
Well, I think, honestly, the reason fracking keeps coming up is because it's a very neat way to boil down this much, much larger question about what do we do about climate change. And if you really think about it, what we saw on stage last night was one set of candidates who believe that climate change is real, who believe that the 51 billion tons of greenhouse gases that we're emitting into our atmosphere every single year is a problem that is only going to continue to be a growing crisis if we don't address it. And it doesn't come down to simply an issue of fracking. fracking. On the other side, you have, Mike Pence saying that they're going to, quote, follow the science. Yet, as we know, just days before, Donald Trump said science doesn't know. And so fundamentally, the issue is so much larger than this, and it's a kind of a convenient pump fake that caters to the industry and ignores some of the much, much larger issues that are at play and that are going to impact communities all around this country, but all around the world.
So let's talk about also the Green New Deal. The Vice President attacked Senator Harris for her support of the Green New Deal, a climate justice policy proposal. But the thing about it is, though Harris supported the Green New Deal, Biden's environmental plan is actually not the Green New Deal. It's much more narrow. So, Lynda, on this issue and others, was Senator Harris effective in sort of threading the needle to win support? Because part of the suggestion has been floating out there that, a vote for Biden, what you're really getting is Kamala Harris, and she's so left you might not want her.
Yes, I mean, again, I think it's a convenient argument, but you're really looking at two candidates that have been able to work across the aisle that are both actually, frankly, more moderate than some more left members of the party would prefer. So it's kind of an interesting line that she has to walk for sure. I think what's most important is to understand that both of these are individuals who are interested in being pragmatic and practical about how we get out of the mess that we're in right now, whether it's related to climate change or the coronavirus or the economy or any number of other issues that we know that the White House and the administration is going to face in the coming months and years. So I certainly think that she's trying to balance the things that she has herself held to be true in the past and where she knows that this needs to go. And frankly, the early polling, the flash polling coming out of the debate last night showed that she was quite persuasive. She overwhelmingly won over women, which certainly are going to be an important factor in this election. She won over people of color, but she also really held even on independents and white voters. So net positive for the Biden-Harris campaign.
And it was sort of interesting too, Leslie. I mean, the vice president, generally the criticism from Democrats and from the left is that Republicans are rejecting science when it comes to climate change. But in fact, I thought it was sort of interesting the way Vice President Pence answered the questions about that. He said, well, we'll follow the science. But that's not really acknowledging that the science is part of the policy-making decisions that the vice president and the president undertake when they are talking about climate change. So I wonder if, you've got the president when he was out in California visiting with Governor Newsom and some others, sort of rejecting science and saying science doesn't know, when he was told by scientists, here's why this is happening. Did you feel as if you're a Republican and you want to continue to vote for Donald Trump and Pence, that was the right answer? If you look at what's been happening across this country with the fires, with the hurricanes that we've been seeing, there's been a state of disarray over the last couple of years.
Sure. The big issue, kind of the elephant in the room, is Biden's alluding to the fact that he wants to eliminate fossil fuels. This is a fossil fuels debate. And if you really think about it from a political lens, though this particular argument and how it was framed is talking a lot to Pennsylvania and the voters there, which is a really important swing state. If you wrap together Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, which if you think of the 138 million people that voted in 2016, it came down to about less than 80,000 votes in those three states. And fossil fuels and this issue of how you balance climate change with elimination of fossil fuels is extraordinarily important. I think so. One, there was a political angle to that response, but two, you've seen that there's a balance in terms of an understanding that there is the human impact on the environment and what can be done to reduce that in an effective way that does not kind of destroy a certain way of life and balances industry. What's the proper balance? That conversation needs to be had, and that's where I think you're going to see bipartisan support, but a kind of a broad effort, like the Green New Deal and like where the progressive left is moving, is not something that I would say the safe middle and Republicans are interested in.
It's a good analysis, specifically about Pennsylvania and some of those states that rely on that kind of energy. Although I'll note that Forbes and the Washington Post and others have reported that the coal industry has lost almost 1,000 jobs since President Trump became president of the United States. So voters will have that to keep in the back of their minds as they head to the polls in a few weeks. Leslie Sanchez and Lynda Tran, so good to see you guys. I don't think we've done a 4-box with the 4 of us in quite some time, right? I was trying to go back. It's been too long since we had the 4-box. It's good to see you all. Thank you very much.
Yes, likewise.
Thank you.